Hi, and welcome to another video. This time let's have a look into immutability, or maybe better to say mutability, of lists and other collections and also maps in Dart. By default, if we create a list, then maybe a variable to which we will assign it will be final and immutable, but the elements that the list will be holding, this actually will be mutable, because list by default allows us to add elements to it, remove them, and so on. Therefore, let's jump to Vim and let's see in what situation this might be a problem. I have a very simple script here which have a main function, and we have this class which is a model defining a wine bottle. Now let's say that this model is coming somewhere from the database, and this is the data that we just want to print on the screen. So we could have something as follows: some final bottle, and let's say this bottle is a wine bottle. And now let's give it some ID, let's give it some name, red, why not? And also let's give it a list of ingredients. Let's say it will be water and grapes. Then down here let's print the list of ingredients. There we go. Now let's run the script and we see water and grapes was printed. All good so far. But now let's say that some malicious developer takes this model somewhere in the code later. Let's say that this is accessible in some view, and then he just tries to do something like this. Bottle, ingredients, add, sand. Let's run this script. There we go. And our wine bottle consists now of water, grapes and sand, which is probably not the best drink ever. So in this case, we would like to not have this list modifiable in any way. We want it to be immutable as the whole object should be. And in order to achieve that, we can use something called UnmodifiableListView. So the UnmodifiableListView sits in this Dart collections package. If we have a look over here at the documentation, you can see that we have a constructor. Constructor takes an iterable, a source iterable, which will be our list. And then you get a couple of different options that you can use on it. Notice that this also lists here the add method and add all, but it's not supported. Let's, instead over here of passing the ingredients directly to the field, declare it as list of string. And now over here, let's just do this, ingredients, and let's assign to it UnmodifiableListView, and let's give it the ingredients passed as a constructor argument. There we go. Now let's run this script again, and here we go. We get an exception which is unhandled here. Unsupported operation cannot add to a unmodifiable list. If you have a look here at the documentation again, then we have also this UnmodifiableMapView and UnmodifiableSetView if you want to do the same thing with maps or sets. Finally, let's also briefly look into the implementation of this thing. So here's our UnmodifiableListView. And first of all, it extends some unmodifiable list base. We will talk about it in a moment. But secondly, you can see that this unmodifiable list view, it's not actually supposed to be like a list on its own, because it has this source iterable over here. And then methods like getLength over here just return the length of the source list, which was passed through the constructor to unmodifiable list view. Any method that is there, except of these, will just throw an error because, for example, we cannot add, we cannot remove something from that list. So now another question is, what is this unmodifiable list base? And this is a valid question to ask, because if we have a look at the documentation over here of unmodifiable list view, then actually we don't see it in the documentation. We see that unmodifiable list view is implementing list base and not the unmodifiable list base over here. In order to get access to this unmodifiable list base, we have to look into something called the internal package in Dart. We can get access to it by importing the internal package from Dart. We can do it in any script just like this, but you will not be able to run this code right now because it's a private package that is just not available. But anyways, we are able to import it just to see the implementation of this list base. So let me just add here this unmodifiable list base so that we can simply navigate to it right now in the Vim. An unmodifiable list base is nothing more than a class, which is an abstract class. And all it does is it extends this list base right now, so this is what the documentation says. What it actually does is only adding this mixin over here. UnmodifiableListMixin. And this mixin defines all of these methods like add, like first, like last, and so on. And all it does is it just throws exception if we try to use them. As we've seen, we have one problem with this implementation. Our UnmodifiableListView is actually also a list or an iterable. That means that we can still call this add on ingredients over here. However, add will just throw an exception as we've seen in the source code. Now this is not ideal. This is a potential violation of the risk of substitution principle, and this can lead to runtime exceptions. There are two ways that we can do it better. The first way is to write our own wrapper that would be like a modifiable list view wrapper around a list. Just instead of extending an unmodifiable list base, which actually extends a list and then implements iterable, we could not do it, and we could just maintain our list inside over here and expose only the fields that we want to expose from the internal source. So for example, length and access to an element. Another solution, as a friend of mine Vince pointed out, I will link to his podcast in the description, is to use a library called ktdart. ktdart is a inspired by Kotlin library that is making a projection or a port of Kotlin's standard library to Dart and Flutter, and it exposes collections such as ktList, ktMap, and ktSet. The difference to the collections available in Dart by default is that these collections have immutable list of elements. Once we define them, we cannot change the list of elements. In case we would need to have a mutable list of elements, then we can use instead this ktMutableList, ktMutableSet, and so on. Let's try to use it now in our example. So we no longer need this line. And over here, instead of defining this as a list, let's define it as ktList. Now we have to import that. And immediately you can see that now it's not possible to add element to this list, because the add method does not exist on it. Also over here we cannot just pass the Dart's list anymore. We have to use the ktList of as an example. There are other constructors as well. And then we can give it our water and grapes. So right now we will avoid runtime exceptions because adding sand to this list will be not possible simply because the interface of ktList does not provide the add function. If instead we use the ktMutableList, then you can see already that now we have access to the add function. And of course we have to define this list as a ktMutableList because ktMutableList is a subtype of a list, of ktList, of the immutable list. And not the other way like it is in Dart, where the immutable list is a subtype of a mutable list. ktdart is a very interesting library, and I will have a look into it and probably will make another video about it, so stay tuned and look for that pretty soon. I hope you learned something interesting today and something that will help you write better cohesive and not coupled code. If so, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, I'll see you the next time. But for now I code you to death, bye bye!